Hi there, and welcome to the Book Report with me, Dr. Caudill. I'm going to be talking to you today about a really great book, but it's not a light read. It's a pretty deep and heavy read, although totally worth your time and effort, but you have to be in the right headspace for it. The title is The Untethered Soul, and the author is Michael Singer. And this book is not that new. I think it was originally written in 2007, but it's made a bit of a splash lately and now has sold over 3 million copies. He was interviewed within the last year by Oprah, and he's got a very interesting story. So I look forward to sort of sharing with you my thoughts on the book and specifically how I think it relates to us as parents and what we can take from it that's going to help us to be the best parents that we can be. So this book for me prompted a lot of thoughts, both personally and professionally. It's one that in the days that have followed my completion of the book, I've continued to sort of mull over and think about. It's one of those books that really sticks with you and really changes your paradigm and perspective on so many things. So I want to talk a little bit first about Michael Singer, just because I think his story is pretty interesting. You can read about him on his website or through Wikipedia, and there's various podcasts that he's been on recently as well that are worth watching and listening to. But he reports that he started his journey on spirituality in the 1970s while he was a graduate student at the University of Florida studying an economics PhD. And he was hanging out with a friend who was a close friend, not someone he was generally nervous to be around. And what he experienced that night was this awkward silence with the friend. And in that silence, he recognized thoughts in his mind that were anxious, neurotic thoughts like, oh, why can't I think of anything to say? Oh, he's going to think something's wrong with me. Well, I could say something about the weather. Oh, no, that's going to be stupid. Well, I could ask him if he's hungry, does he want something to eat? No, that's stupid. And then he just sort of had this epiphany that, who is thinking these thoughts? What is this voice? That's not me. He realized that if he was hearing it, it wasn't him. Because, of course, in order to hear something, we have to be separate from it. And so that made him really start to think about, what is this voice? And talk to everyone about, do you have the voice too? Have you heard this as well? And he started to read a lot about Sigmund Freud. He said that he went to the stacks of the University of Florida library and started reading everything he could get his hands on to try to understand, what is this voice? Where does it come from? And he was kind of surprised to find out that Freud didn't say anything about the voice. And when I heard this description, which was on Maya Bialik has a podcast called Breakdown, and she interviewed him, and he was talking about this, and I was realizing, that was exactly the experience I had as a psychiatrist reading this book. Was this is so totally different than all of the other teachings that I've come across and been exposed to, which are primarily focused on thoughts and emotions as one and the same as who you are. I mean, we view that as psychiatrists, tell me how you're feeling, what kinds of thoughts are you having? And then we go from there to make a diagnosis and to make a treatment plan. And so much of our modern therapies are really focused on dealing directly with those thoughts. So I've always viewed people and myself too, as one and the same as my thoughts and feelings. And although I have always recommended as well meditation as an additional approach to enjoying better mental health, I thought that it came from giving you a little bit of space before you had a thought until it would cause a reaction in your emotions. But here, Michael Singer really goes next level with the whole idea and says that it's not just a matter of meditating to create a little bit of space. It's a matter of realizing that you are not the voice in your head. And if you're not the voice in your head, and you're not your feelings, and you're not your body, then what are you? And this was the first chapter, and from there it gets even a little harder. So, if that's kind of mind-blowing to you, then you know what you're in for with this book. So chapter 2 is really getting exactly to that question. Who are you? And he gives an example, and he says, if I ask someone, who are you? She might say, I'm Sally Smith. And you would say, okay, yeah, but that's your name, that's your label. Who are you? And she might say, oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I'm Fred's wife. And this is how you might introduce yourself, right? If someone came up to you at a party, you might introduce yourself as your name and then who you are in relation to your other significant person or the person you came to the party with. And his point is, again, Well, that's kind of even worse. Now you're defining yourself based on your relationship to another person, and that's not who you are. And so then this imaginary Sally Smith says, okay, you're right. So I'm Sally Smith. I was born in this town. I went to small town USA elementary school. I was the lead in the school play in 6th grade. Then I went to small town USA high school. Then I went to state college. Then I met Fred, and we got married, and we have 2 kids, and they're doing great, and I work at the bank, and I have lots of friends, and that's who I am. And again, he says, okay, well, that's what's happened to you in your life, but that's not who you are. And for me, from a mental health perspective, this is pretty big. Like, if you aren't what's happened to you in your life, if we can be totally free of that in our identity and let go of whatever badness may have happened in the past, then so many wonderful things would happen. So is it really potentially that easy that we can identify ourselves as something different than our experiences? And if so, that's kind of amazing. So this chapter took me the longest to get through, actually, because I really had a hard time kind of grasping what all the implications of that would be. He says that the self, which he says is equivalent to the Atman in Hindu religion, or the Buddhist self, or the Judeo-Christian soul, the true you is the one who witnesses, the one who is aware of situations, thoughts, feelings, and emotions. But it's not those things. It's behind all of that, and it's separate from all of that. So on page 28 of the book, really early on, he has this quote: "I am the one who sees. From back in here somewhere, I look out and I'm aware of the events, thoughts, and emotions that pass before me." Wow, right? I mean, that's kind of new. For me, that's new. And I was kind of blown away in this book because I think I'm a pretty thoughtful and reflective person, and yet I went through 45 years of my life, I guess, without ever really asking myself the question of who am I? Because all of my prior definitions of who I am were the kinds of definitions related to what I've done, who I'm related to, where I've been, and experiences I've had. But when it comes down to defining who I am, I guess it's something much simpler, isn't it? And uncomfortable because it feels less impressive. We're also used to presenting sort of our pedigree, like the great things we've done, the reasons why you should think we're significant. But if you boil it down, who I really am, who you really are, is something both less and more than that. So this is why I had only read 56 pages of the book after the first 5 days of attempting to read this book. Because all along, I'd be going along, be like, yeah, okay, I'm with you, Michael Singer, I'm with you, okay, I got you. And then he would say something, and I'd be like, wait, what? And I'd be reeling from the implications of what that means. So in this case, the case of you are not who you know, you are not where you've been, you are not what you've studied, you are not your degrees, you are not your achievements, you are not your experiences, good or bad. You are something else. Think about all the judging that we do of ourselves and of others that's not based on our true selves. So much of the energy and judgment and thoughts that we have about everyone and everything is not based on the true person that's in there. So if I'm not defined by the college I attended, the degrees I obtained, the certifications I have, the place where I live, the car that I drive, the clothes that I wear, which of course I know I'm not defined by those things because I haven't always been this person, and I was me before I was this person. I was me before I achieved any of the things, and I will be me even if I lose any of those things. But if I'm not any of those things, then what am I? How do I measure myself? And how do I evaluate others? So it was a little disorienting, actually a lot disorienting, especially for me as an American, because I feel like so much of our society and our experience as Americans is placing value on what you do, defining who you are. But at the same time, this idea that that's not who you are, it's not who anyone is, was a really freeing idea for me. And had a lot of implications in the way I think about parenting and raising my kids, because it makes me want to be genuinely curious about all people, to get to know who they really are, including my kids. And it makes me imagine how beautiful our world would be if we could all be curious about each other without closing ourselves off because of an idea that maybe someone isn't worth our time or our effort to get to know them, because we've decided something about them makes them not worth knowing. So it made me think, like, would gender equality finally be achieved if we could all do this? Yeah, probably. Would racism disappear? Yeah, probably. Would that be awesome? Yeah. But also, would teens getting accepted at competitive colleges cease to be viewed as something to aspire towards? Would there be nothing that's prestigious or worth achieving? Would we all just stop caring about everything? Would the world kind of stop? I don't know. What do you think? Would we lose or gain overall as a society if we all tried to embrace this idea, this awareness, that our true selves has nothing to do with our achievements? And if we tried to live our lives seated in our conscious awareness with nothing to prove, and recognize that other people can do the same, and that's good, not bad. I don't know. Think about it. I'm curious. Put some comments below. And then as a child psychiatrist, this whole concept, I'm very curious about how to introduce the idea of not being your thoughts, not being your emotions, not being your body to kids. Because I know we tell them, don't judge a book by its cover, and we use all these kinds of terms, but when you're a kid, you don't yet have the ability to think this abstractly, and this is a very abstract concept. Kids really can't grasp such abstract concepts until they're probably in their teens. And that very awakening of abstract thought can be pretty disruptive. I remember for me, myself, as a teenager, it was disruptive. And you probably can think of similar things. I mean, typically what happens is you start going from a view that's very black and white, very things are good or bad, you're on the naughty list or the nice list, to realizing that no human being is 100% good, nor is any human being 100% bad. And that can be very disruptive, because you have to come to terms with the fact that someone who was your best friend also may do things that hurt you, and your parents, who you thought were pretty great and knew everything, might make some serious mistakes or might really have some gaps in their knowledge. And this kind of shakes your worldview and can be kind of scary. But the framework pre-adolescence, that you're good or bad, nice or naughty, it's very simple. But the concept that we are the voice in our heads, we're not the voice in our heads, we're not our thoughts or our emotions, that's a deep abstract concept. So it's going to be tough to get that concept through to our young children, preteen children. But I think what we can do is sort of live it with them, and through our reactions to their experiences in life, let them know that we see the real them. So not to overvalue their achievements, nor to overemphasize their failures, but just to kind of take it all in stride. To let our kids know that they are not their report cards or their grades, they are not their detentions, they're not the goal that they score or the goal that they miss in their sports team game, that they're going to lose friends and gain friends, and that doesn't define them, that they might win or lose a contest that they enter, and that doesn't define them, that they might try to play an instrument and it might go well or poorly, but that doesn't define them. And that it's all just part of the beautiful journey, that the outcome isn't related. So I think this actually ties in very neatly as a concept to the idea of growth mindset and praising effort and not outcomes. But we can teach this idea also by helping our kids to be aware of their thoughts and letting them see that we know that they are not their thoughts. Helping them see that sometimes their thoughts are good and sometimes they're bad, but they are continuous under all of that. They are always them, and they are always valuable and beautiful, and we see that beautiful person that they are. And that will hopefully help them to have a strong sense of self that will weather difficulties that come later. We can remind them that they are a beautiful soul that they will do great things and that they are doing exactly what they're meant to do. But before we can help our kids, this book also encourages us to work on ourselves. And it talks about how we can increase the amount of time as we're going through life that we ourselves are centered in our awareness rather than being attached, having our consciousness attached to an object, whether that be a situation or a thought or a feeling evoked by a situation. And this process involves recognizing when an inner feeling is arising because of a situation. And that can be a situation that's external to us, or it can be an internally derived, like thought-based situation. He talks about it as an energy disruption. I realize this language isn't going to appeal to a lot of people. It's going to sound kind of woo-woo. So let me try to translate it into something that hopefully might be more relatable to most of us. He basically says that we go through life, right? And we encounter all kinds of inputs, things we see, hear, feel every day. A minute ago there were sirens going by outside, but I was very focused on this. It didn't disrupt me. I was walking the other day with my 6-year-old daughter in town, and it's a busy town here in LA. And so there's people all over, and most of those people just walk by, and it didn't really register with me or impact me in any way. But we got to a certain intersection, and this little kid, my daughter is 6, and this kid looks to be maybe 3, he was very small, went gliding on one of those glider bikes, like very confidently, straight across the intersection as his parent was walking a few steps behind. And I saw this, and my first thought was like, wow, look at that. But instantly, I started to have thoughts about like, oh man, he's only half my kid's age, and look at him go. My kid can't ride a bike. And then I started thinking like, oh, why can't she ride a bike? Is something wrong with her? No, there's nothing wrong with her. It's with you. If you had spent more time with her, if you had taught her to ride a bike, obviously she can ride it. She's able physically to ride a bike. You just haven't spent the time with her. And I started to have these thoughts about not being a good parent because I haven't devoted enough time to doing bike rides with my daughter. And then I started thinking, oh, by this age, my son could ride a bike and you haven't spent as much time with your second kid. And is that really fair? And this whole spiral started. I mean, in moments that really took me away then from her in that moment walking and got me caught up in my own mind. And I started to even have feelings of kind of annoyance with her because she wasn't the physical prowess that I had hoped for. And I started thinking, what is wrong with me? Is it worth it for me to be upset that my 6-year-old can't ride a bike? No. Am I actually upset that she can't ride a bike? No. Am I worried that this really means something seriously wrong with her? No. Do I know that she's going to ride a bike if and when she becomes ready to ride one? Yes, I do believe that. But so quickly, all those thoughts kind of took over me. So I think that's what Michael Singer is talking about in the book. When he talks about energy disruptions, he's just talking about the fact that, and it's different for each of us, right? Like what things are going to trigger stuff in us, but something sometimes triggers something in us that then sends us on this thought spiral that then affects how we're feeling and doing emotionally, and that drains us of a lot of mental energy. And the triggers are different for each and every one of us. So he can't give you, one particular set of instructions, because we have to practice on our own each day, recognizing when we start feeling tension, disruption inside, when we start that thought spiral. Try to catch it very early on and try to relax and let go, and practice letting go and embracing peace and happiness with the way things are, as they are, and not wishing for something to be different. But the most difficult part of this is it requires letting go of the illusion of control. We all want to be able to control things, right? I want to be able to control when my daughter's going to learn to ride a bike and how well she's going to ride it. But I can't. And it's hard. We want so badly to be able to exert a lot of control in our lives, but in reality, we can only influence things. We can't control them. But for me, just this idea that it is possible to let things go, and that I could be and will be happier when I do learn to let things go and accept things as they are. That alone feels good to me. And in the week or so since I finished this book, I have found moments in my day-to-day life that I've been able to let things go, and I feel that I have been more present in my life. And if I view this as a game, I think I will get better and better in that as I go along. And I think I will be happier. But there is still part of me, and this came up as I was reading the book, where I thought, okay, that's all good and well, right? Fine, let go. But if you let go of everything and you act like nothing bothers you, how do you get things done? At the end of the day, life still has to happen. Like, we still have to do our jobs. We have to get out of the house in the morning. We have to pay our bills. We have to go to meetings. We have to get places on time. How do you do that if you're just like, whatever? But I don't think he's saying, and I know he's not, because this same man actually ran a $1 billion company that went public, a software company. So he's not saying that you have to be some Zen master, off in a temple, not living life. He's actually saying the opposite, that you need to live your life and surrender to it. And his point is that we spend a lot of mental energy each day holding the feelings that get elicited by these triggers at bay, so that we can function as if they're not bothering us, even though they are bothering us. They are bothering us. And we kind of push these feelings and thoughts aside so that we can act professional or seem happy in a situation, even if the situation is someplace we'd rather not be. We try to pretend that we're okay, but the end result of this is that eventually we might blow up or burn out. And is it because you're not doing what you really want to do, or is it because you're not letting yourself be at peace with what is? As a psychiatrist, I have worked a lot with patients who've complained of irritability. And this usually arises when you're prevented from doing something that you really want to do. But in reality, maybe it's arising when you're failing to accept what is. So to give you another example recently of a very, for me, relatable parental irritability that I saw and witnessed. This weekend I was at a local children's museum, and we were there in the morning from about 10:30 until it was approaching noon, and people were getting hungry. And I saw parents over and over again trying to round up their kids. And the kids, of course, are just having a ball. They don't want to leave. They're just running around. They'd stay there all day. They're oblivious of the fact that it's almost lunchtime. And the parents are very ineffectively trying to get their kids to go. They're trying various tactics, like, okay, 5 more minutes, one more thing, time to put on your shoes, let's go. And over, what I saw was that they would eventually get pushed to the place where they would tell their kids, like, okay, goodbye, I'm leaving. And they would turn and make like they were going to walk out. Now, most of these kids were really little kids, like 3 years old and under. And none of these parents actually abandoned their children, thankfully. But I was watching this and thinking, oh, I've been there. I have done that too. You're bluffing, of course. It's not nice. You know that it's not nice. But you get so frustrated you don't know what to do. So what's wrong with us? Why can't we figure out a way to peacefully extract our children and get lunch? I mean, ultimately, they probably also want to get lunch, right? So this is a good example, I think, of a way that I think this technique of letting go could be put into place in our daily life. So if you were starting as a parent to be in this museum feeling a little overstimulated, it was noisy, starting to feel hungry, it's lunchtime, maybe you haven't eaten breakfast, and you're ready to go, instead of immediately, telling your kid it's time to go, if you could first notice that disruption in you, that sensation, that tension, and just be with it. And Michael Singer would say, just relax your shoulders, take a breath, just let it go. Like, physically try to let go of the physical tension. It's easier to do this earlier as this thing, tension, whatever it is, hits you than it is once it's peaked and really gotten going. So try to calm yourself down. And then from that calm place, I think it would be much easier to do what I often try to coach parents to do, especially parents of young kids, which is calmly get close and quiet to your kid and have kind of a playful tone in your voice and be like, hey, and say their name until they give you eye contact. So like, hey, Joey, guess what? And then when your child looks at you and says, what? You can say like, I'm feeling kind of hungry. Are you feeling hungry? Now, Joey's probably going to say like, no, I want to play. And then you want to reflect and be like, yeah, it's really fun here, isn't it? We're having a blast playing. Like, what do you want to play next? and invite him to say what he wants to play next. And then say like, okay, how about we pick 3 more things that we do together? Does that sound good? And then we'll go get some lunch. And he may say no. He may want to negotiate. He may want 10 more things, but hopefully you can compromise. Maybe you're going to do 5 things or 4 things. Hopefully you can get him to do these things fairly quickly. And then hopefully you're going to be able to leave there both feeling like you got something positive. The alternative, if you do what you normally would do, which might escalate to the point of you being overwhelmed, being like, well, peace out, see you later, I'm going. Then you've got your child doing what they usually do in that situation, which I would guess is one of 2 things. They either get angry and upset and kind of withdraw from you and stop listening to you, like pretend you're not talking to them, or they might become an emotional mess and start crying and sobbing. Either way, you now have some emotional damage that you're going to have to fix before you can get your child together and get them to leave with you. And that makes it harder and longer as a process versus the little bit of extra effort and time it takes. But that little bit of extra effort and time is something that you really do have to be in a calm space to be able to do without resentment and frustration. So I do think there's a lot of value in these techniques in our lives as parents day to day. And I think if you try to practice this letting go exercise in your day-to-day life, there's many opportunities to do it. And if he's right, it gets easier and the happiness gets greater and your access to your natural internal energy becomes greater too. And that all sounds like a win. So the other thing is, I think this really ties into the idea that we all want and expect our kids to exhibit emotional regulation skills. But we really need to work on our own emotional regulation first to be examples to our children and models to them. And I do think that this letting go practice that he talks about and this act of trying to be seated in your conscious awareness rather than reacting in your life as things happen, unified with your thoughts and feelings as one identity, but by being a little bit separate from that, I think that we can be better role models of emotional reactivity. Not that we're not going to have emotions. Of course, we're human beings, we're going to have emotions, but hopefully we can control those emotions a little bit better, express them a little bit better, and recover when they do overwhelm us more quickly. So next in the book, he talks about fear. And fear goes by many names: fear, anxiety, stress. If you tend to be a type A, perfectionistic overachiever, me, you probably don't like to admit that you're anxious. You like to say that you're stressed and blame it on other things, external sources, not your own. But really, it's all the same. And so what is it? Fear is essentially an inner tightening, again, like a disruption of your energy that we experience in reaction to thoughts about how things might be if they go against the inner idea of what we have about what things should be. And we all have, and he describes in the book in this beautiful visual metaphor, like a house that we build that's the way the world should be, the way things should be, for us and for others. And by building that and having that idea inside, we naturally create something that the world is going to bump up against and be in conflict with frequently, right? And so it goes along with the truth with a capital T that we can't control the world. And this is in fact where the inner voice, the inner roommate comes from. We don't come out of the womb with this inner voice, right? If you look at a 1-2-year-old child, they're peacefully going along, babbling, having fun, and there's no voice inside their head about like, oh, I better not do that or mom's gonna be mad. No, they're in the Garden of Eden. They're enjoying life. They don't have that disruption yet. And we develop this inner voice as a survival mechanism to deal with the fear that arises when we realize that the world doesn't match this house that we've built, our idea of what it should be. And we can't control it. And so it helps us to believe that we can prepare by overthinking. But we can spend our whole life thinking about how we can prevent the disruptions to our house, but we miss the life. So he has a quote in the book that says, "That which doesn't disturb you is okay. That which does is not okay." Sorry. That which doesn't disturb you is okay. That which does is not okay. We define the entire scope of our outer experience based on our inner problems. So that means the things that disturb us are the things that we notice. So in my example previously of walking through a busy town with my daughter, many people walked by, many families walked by. There were vendors, there were cars, there were noisy things. Those things didn't disturb me. But what disturbed me was the thing that resonated with my idea that my 6-year-old should ride a bike. My house has the idea that 6-year-olds should ride bikes. And my 6-year-old is failing to meet my expectations. So when I see another kid that reminds me of that, boom, it triggers all these thoughts and feelings. And he says, if you want to grow spiritually, you have to change that. If you are defining creation, existence, based on the most messed up part of your being, which means the things that disturb the things you're afraid of, what do you expect creation to look like? It's going to look like a frightful mess. So yeah, you're going to feel anxious if everything you experience is the stuff that bounces off the things you're afraid of. So in order to let go of that and feel at peace, we need to be able to question those things that disturb us and let them go and accept that maybe we don't need to fear things like we think we do. And he uses perspective as a tool to help us let go. And he gives this example, which is a really mind-blowing truth. And he basically says, each of us is one person. So we have our little pinhole view of the universe, right? Our perspective. And he reminds himself regularly, I'm just one person spinning on a planet in the middle of nothing. And then if he goes farther than that, he reminds himself that 1.3 million planet Earths would fit in our sun. And that's a physical fact. And then our sun, the star that's the center of our solar system, is one of 300 billion stars in our galaxy alone. And our galaxy is one of 2 trillion galaxies in the universe. Now that is just like mind-boggling, right? I mean, how small do you feel after thinking about that? So when I think about that for real, about how small I am, and then I consider that all my awareness is focused on my inner melodrama, all I can think is like, calm down, lady. Chill out. It's ridiculous, right? It really is ridiculous when you think about it. And to be clear, I'm not saying, and I don't think Michael Singer is either, that I don't matter or that you don't matter because the universe is so big and nothing that we do matters. I think it's exactly the fact that it's not a big deal that does matter, that life, that what matters is beautiful, but it's about the lighter things. It's about the easier things. It's about the things that are just there behind all of the melodrama, the relationships and the love and the joy that really are at our heart and center. Another book that I will be reviewing here soon is called 7 Regrets of the Dying. And it was written by a woman who did a lot of work with hospice patients as they were dying and talked with them in their last days of life about their experiences and their best moments and their regrets. And over again, what people seemed to talk about most was regrets about letting close relationships, whether it be with friends or family, lapse or grow distant, and placing too much emphasis and spending too much time during the time that they were alive on things that most of us do view as our goals in life. Like we want to achieve something, whether it be a professional goal or an academic goal or a job goal or a financial goal or a fame goal or something tangible that we view as a measure of success, of having arrived. But I think if we take the time to kind of meditate and quietly reflect on what's really been most important in our life, what's brought us the most joy, it's usually the people and relationships closest to us. It's our family, it's our kids, it's our partners, our best friends. And that's why I'm so committed to helping parents build the strongest possible relationships with their kids, because it's developing those deep roots during the very short period of time that we have with them when they're young, especially those first 12 years when we have the most opportunities to really connect with them, to really let them know that we see them, the real them, the them deep down underneath, not their physical bodies, not their achievements, but the soul and beauty and power that they are. And that's when we really have the biggest impact on them, I think. So that perspective that you and I are just each having our one little pinhole view through our consciousness of this huge universe for a short blip of time on a planet that's so small, 1.3 million of them would fit in our sun, and that 8 billion of us are all having this same experience, right? This melodrama that we are calling life. Is that what life is really about? I mean, I think this book was really an awakening for me because it made me feel like I think that's true. Life is about more than the melodrama that most of us live in and identify with as ourselves. I think we are bigger than that. And our shared experience and our consciousness and the beauty that comes from that connection and love is really, really powerful. So thank you for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed this review of The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And please remember to like and subscribe to the page if you want to be kept abreast of future readings and summaries. And you can also follow me on @theparentdoctor at Instagram. And my website is www.theparentdoctor.com. Thank you so much.